Hey folks, this is Mike Tholfsen from the Microsoft Education team. I'm coming at you in the inclusive classroom, which is going to be our theme today. It's going to be fantastic. And I work on the Microsoft Education team. I'm a product manager, and we have been doing these regular remote learning with Microsoft EDU webinars to help bring you the latest information to help out in these unprecedented times. I feel like unprecedented times is getting so overused. We need like a new way to describe these unprecedented times, but they are unprecedented. So the agenda today, I'll be doing the latest news and updates. I'll be talking about just some of the resources. There's so many great resources for the inclusive classroom and accessibility tools. I'm not going to be doing demos of them, but I'll just be making sure you have all the latest and greatest resources. But then we have Karyn Fillhart, who's going to be coming and talking about IEPs and SPED and beyond in remote learning. And Karyn has amazing experience in this space. And so this is really one of the hottest topics, I think, in the nation and world. And so I'm really looking forward to hearing what Karyn's going to be talking about there. The quick links to get started: our remote learning site, which is always the one we start with, our Teams for Education Quick Start Guide, which is now in many different languages, and make sure to sign up for the remote learning community. Over 5,000 educators from around the world are in this community, working together, learning from each other, getting questions answered, and the product team, including myself, are all in this community from Microsoft. So Microsoft's in there helping and supporting as well all of these customers. For today's updates, first off, got a little accessibility theme. I have a accessibility and inclusion quick tips YouTube playlist that has a bunch of 1 to 2 minute little quick tips on how to use our inclusive software for reading, writing, math, communication. If you see that, it's a pretty small window, but if you can see that over my head, that's what we also just today had a really well received blog from educators, which is a bunch of new features we just launched for Teams meetings. So things like end meeting now, that's been the top request, so the teacher can pop that at the end of the meeting and end the meeting for all the students. That just rolled out some of our custom backgrounds. And then we also had said an attendance report is coming in April, as well as the raise hand feature. Those are both coming out in April this month. And then also we just launched a brand new Teams remote learning quick tip videos playlist. And so Microsoft Education, now I've been doing the little ones in my basement, so to speak, that are low budget. The higher, nicer budget ones just came out. And these are on this YouTube playlist here, a bunch of getting started with Teams for remote learning. So that's a great one. So the inclusive classroom, I'm going to start here. I'm just going to show and talk about some resources for anyone out there who wants to get going with reading, writing, math, and communication, and the accessibility tools that are inclusively designed and built in: dyslexia, dysgraphia, ADHD, English language learners, autism, mobility impairments, all of the above. We have a ton of resources. And so what I'll do is I'm actually going to walk through the slides, and then I'll show a couple of these just in my browser. So the 4 that you should bookmark the most are these interactive guides. So reading, writing, math, communication. These are web-based interactive guides, and they click you through and teach you how to use all of our tools. If you've ever seen me do demos, they're all captured in these nice interactive guides. And these can be used by educators, by parents, by students. So things like the Immersive Reader, Microsoft Translator, dictation, editor, our math tools for inclusion, all of those things, PowerPoint captioning, it's all in these interactive guides, and we highly encourage you to share them broadly. There's also these quick tip videos I've been talking about. I have a playlist for inclusion and accessibility. I have another playlist for English language learners and their parents. And these are 1 to 2 minute little easy to digest videos that walk you through step by step on how to do some of these different inclusive tools and tips and tricks. There's a lot of things there that already exist, but you probably don't know about them. And I'm working with a lot of districts and a lot of cities now, and there's just a lack of knowledge in many cases where they didn't know, oh my gosh, I could do these things right now today, and it's all free. There's also this is from a few months ago, but it's very relevant, an hour-long inclusive classroom webinar that I led and it's on the Microsoft Education channel for accessibility. There's a link here for it, and I embedded it in the deck, but there's a full video. So if you want to watch this or share this video again of me narrating and talking through and showing all the pieces of the inclusive classroom, that's there. And then the other one that we just did last week is the remote learning accessibility webinar. And that's, again, I went through a bit quicker, but myself and Rachel Berger, who is a dyslexia consultant and an accessibility expert that is on my team, her and I both did. It's about 30 minutes, but it's the full remote learning accessibility webinar. That link is here and it's embedded. And also the PowerPoint deck that I always show that has all the slides and the latest features and updates. And if you want to do remote PD yourself, this inclusive deck is fully public and available. So the link is here, the QR code is here. You can share this with your friends and neighbors, share it with your PD department, share it with parents, fully public. And then we have things like our MEC courses on the educator community. There's a set of PD materials, inclusive classroom PD kits, learning tools, flyers, a whole set of other things. And so just making sure people have access to all those resources. And then finally, on the slide, Wakelet collections. If you know me, I'm a big Wakelet fan, which is a tool to organize links and blogs and tips all in one nice, visually pleasing collection. And I have a whole set of Wakelet collections that I've set up. So inclusive classroom, the immersive reader, and then translator. And just to show a couple of those visually what they look like, the YouTube webinars, that's pretty basic. This is webinar number 1. And then the other webinar, that the remote learning webinar, is here. So that's where I talked through a whole set of things with Rachel Berger on this remote learning webinar. The other one that we have are these quick tip videos. So this is that playlist I talked about for the inclusive classroom and accessibility. And you can see there's dictation, immersive reader, forms, live captions, presenter coach, word prediction, keyboard shortcuts, translating documents and emails. So that's all out there. And then I also put together a playlist for English language learners and their parents. There's a very large population of parents in this country that don't speak the native language very well, and making sure you communicate not only with the students, but with the parents of those students. This is that PowerPoint deck I talked about that I present a lot. So, if you want images and slides and all this great information about the inclusive classroom, this PowerPoint deck is fully available. An example of the interactive guides. So these are those interactive guides that you can go through. And,
welcome to this Microsoft
walks you through how to use the immersive reader.
Open voice settings.
It's like a click through. So, click here.
Students can adjust the speed and even select. Next, let's look at text preferences.
So it's an interactive guide, and
text preferences allow students
through all of the features across reading, writing, math, communication. And then lastly, here's an example of one of those Wakelet collections. This is the Fostering Accessibility and Inclusive Classroom. So many resources, those videos, blogs, webinars, links, videos. It's kind of nice because you can embed all these things, right into this nice Wakelet collection. So that is just a quick tour, and what's nice is you don't have to remember exactly everything you just saw, because it's all in this PowerPoint deck that we're going to make available in our show notes afterwards. And so with that, what we're going to do next, what I'm going to do, I'm going to be introducing Karyn Fillhart. I've known Karyn for a few years now. In my opinion, she's one of the top combination of special education and inclusion and technology combined. Like that's her superpower. She's done some amazing things, done all sorts of great PD, worked with lots of different students and educators. As an MIE expert that we've hung out in the US, we've hung out in other parts of the world together. So I'm really excited to have Karyn on the show, and I'll be her slide clicker, and we're gonna switch the video over to Karyn, and I'll let her introduce herself. And Karyn, take it away.
Hi, Mike. Thank you. How do I follow that?
So, you're talking about better stuff than I showed.
Well, really, there's a lot to go over. And as Mike said, I was a special educator. I was a general education teacher. I am the child of teachers. I'm married to a teacher. But what I do now is I'm a technology training specialist, and I work at a K-12 school district. And starting Saturday, I will be doing a university class. So I see this from a lot of perspectives. And recently I wrote a blog on IEP meetings, because when I sat down, I realized I have probably sat in about 200 IEP meetings over the years. And now I have one of my nephews receive services. He has something called Soto syndrome, which is a disorder we knew nothing about, but we're learning a lot. And it's something that affects him in a number of different ways. He has speech services, etc. And so now I'm sitting in on the IEP meetings as a family member. So I want to go over a couple of things that I have found from those different perspectives. And especially now that you're having to hold many of them virtually due to the current situation. So I don't want to sit here and read all the slides, but a couple of things I want to talk about is making sure everybody is comfortable with the technology that you're using. You've got parents who may be on their phones, you've got teachers who may not have used their laptops for virtual meetings before, and you might even want to consider doing a practice run with a parent ahead of time or with a teacher who may be unsure so that they can feel comfortable and focus on the meeting and not the technology around the meeting. Use a platform that respects privacy. This is the biggest thing. There have been a lot of things in the news lately about different platforms, making sure it's one that legally is protective. And the other thing is headphones. If you're doing your meeting from home, there may be other children, there may be other family members in the house. Try to respect your students' privacy and at least wear headphones to limit what sound is coming out and the content that you're talking about. Also, does everyone have access to the technology? Some parents may need to call in and do it by phone. They may need to have a conversation about that ahead of time. Do they have their phone? Are they using a computer? Are they using a laptop? Use video when possible. And I know this sounds silly and you think, well, we can do it on the phone and we can hear voices. There's a lot that can be communicated by your face and by your facial expressions. And for me, I'd like to know that someone's not rolling their eyes on the other end if I ask a question. I like to be able to see their face, and it also helps with communication, making sure you can understand the intention of what they're saying. A couple of years ago, I had to do one of my nephew's meetings by Skype. And at that point, we weren't using the video Skype, we were using the voice Skype. And so we made sure that everyone in the team introduced themselves when they began to speak. So we knew who was speaking at that moment, since you may not recognize all the voices. And one of the biggest things is avoid educationalese. And those are those buzzwords or terms that come up and you think, oh, well, everyone in the meeting knows. Well, I was sitting in a meeting 2 years ago, and again, I was a former special education teacher. I have my master's in special education. I teach, and they were saying a term that I had never heard of. And I knew if I didn't know it, my sister-in-law next to me didn't know it. And so I spoke up and I said, hey, can you just tell me what you're talking about? And it was just a new terminology that had come in that our district was using or that people were using. And so make sure you're not using those terms that are going to make a parent feel or someone else in the team, like me, feel like they don't know what's being discussed. Another thing with everything going on right now, have ideas for learning at home. For me, there's a bit of an advantage being a, let's see, older teacher, is that when I grew up, we didn't have a lot of technology in the classroom. I got my first computer in the late 80s, and it was about this big and had separate drives and floppies that were this big. So I didn't grow up with technology. So when we talked about things to do at home, we didn't say, go to the computer, sign on to this program. So think about some things that parents can do that aren't all technology based. And if they are technology based, make sure it's something they have access to. It's not something they have to purchase. It's not something they have to buy. And just recognize that their home situation might not be conducive to learning. I was on the phone with a mom the other day helping her, and she had 4 boys in the background who were having a good time all being at home together. And so learning at that time wasn't going to be super great. All right, and Mike, if you want to go ahead and be my clicker. So what I did is I found this great article on understood.org that listed common accommodations for IEPs and 504s. And that list is great, but we need to look at them from a different perspective. So what I did here is I picked out a few of the key ones that I know come up often. And then also linked in the slide deck is the full list from that article, along with all of my virtual alternatives. And I think really what Mike showed us at the beginning are some of those tools that are going to save you. Immersive Reader is the biggest game changer I've ever seen in ed tech. And I was a high school computer operator, so I've been using technology for a lot of years, and I've never seen anything like Immersive Reader. The larger font view, the read aloud. I found the translation, we have a number of second language students. And when I've done presentations with Immersive Reader, I've asked the kids if any of them speak a second language. And so they'll raise their hand and tell me that they speak a second language. But when I ask them to read it, many of them don't know how to read that other language. And so now they're excited going into Immersive Reader view, and they're starting to learn to read in the language that they speak with their grandparents and their parents at home. And I just thought that was such a neat idea and such a neat use for it. Really, the first time I started using Immersive Reader, I was teaching a class how to use Office 365. And we had some extra time, so I thought, let's just play with this Immersive Reader tool. And they were writing a story, and they put on their headphones, and they had their story read back to them. And they heard, one student said, I used the word excited too many times. And so she went back and proofread it. And I thought, that's it. This is not just for students with dyslexia. This is something all teachers can use in every classroom. I taught it to a group of high school students who were so excited. They actually used it with an Office lens, pulled out their phones, took a picture of their textbook, popped in the headphones, and they were good to go, feet up, listening to their text being read to them, along with following along. Working with text, needing it to be larger, virtually is really helpful if they're at home and they have the proper technology, because they can enlarge the text. The tools like text to speech, dictation, speech to text, online calculators, the math tools in OneNote alone. I showed those to some high school teachers a couple weeks ago, and they were blown away, as was I, just writing out the math problems and having them solve step by step by step in OneNote online.
And
the
Karyn,
other thing
I'll add
is,
just as a bonus.
Go ahead.
Just to throw it out there. The most popular quick tip video I've made out of all of them have been the OneNote math features. That one has been super popular. So yeah, a lot of people didn't know. Yeah,
and jump in anytime. But yeah, that a lot of people don't know about that. They just see the math tool, and it can be as simple as I wrote one to show it 3 + 2 =, and they saw what it was. And the graphing, I watched a webinar with Rachel Berger and Lauren Pittman yesterday that showed some of the graphing tools that I hadn't even had a chance to play with. The other thing is, encourage your families to find a consistent area for home learning. So at school, we try to put them where they sit best. And one of my students, I remember, was such a squirrely worm, so to speak. So I had him in the back because he wanted to stand. And this is before the days of, stools and yoga balls and all those different things. Though I had car tires in my classroom with pillows that were really helpful for some flexible seating. So encourage them to try to find a spot that when they're seated here, that's their learning area. Sensory tools. I was in a teacher's room the other day, and she had this band around her chair, and it was for the students to kick with their feet. My nephew had a wobble board, and it looked kind of like a skateboard, but it wobbled just enough so he could stand and get his wiggles out, or sit on it and get his wiggles out while he was learning. Think about the things that you can do at home. I love that my sister-in-law set up a schedule. She has 3 kids at home. And I have to tell you, we really need to respect those parents right now, because they're doing something that we may have 30 kids or 40 kids at a time, but we went to school to train to do this. And we had time to learn to do it. These parents, many of them found out on Friday that they're on their own on Monday. And so we need to support them and keep that communication open. Organizational skills, teach them to use OneNote. One of our junior hires was using OneNote, and he said, it's so easy. My agenda's in there, my information is in there, my teacher can put information in there, and it really was helpful. And this is also a great opportunity for one-on-one or small group teaching, because you're not 7 hours in an elementary classroom or 50 minutes with 40 kids at a secondary classroom. This is a chance that you can get on with some of those students and spend some quality time teaching them some of those skills, or even helping them catch up. The biggest scare about all of this is a couple months without that direct contact with you on a regular daily basis. And the more you can help keep those students keep those skills, the better off they're going to be in the long run. Okay, go ahead and click. Okay, this is huge. OneNote, OneNote, OneNote. And I have to pull out my OneNote cape that I have for this section because Mike will appreciate this.
Oh, yeah.
And I don't know, Mike, if you can see the color. It's one of the older ones. I've had it for so long. I love it.
Mm-hmm.
So I've used technology for years, and I will admit I did not know about OneNote until 2012. It was that purple icon that was always there, and I knew it was there. And I was getting ready to go on vacation with my husband, and he said, well, let's just put it all in OneNote and get it organized where we want to go. And I said, well, I don't even know. What is that? Just, okay, whatever. And he opened it up, and I went, where has this been all my life? I need this. So think about OneNote and how you can use it right now. Teachers, if you're at home, you have time to get some things organized. Create a section in OneNote for each of your students. I used to carry around a binder as I did my observations, as I wrote their IEP goals, as I checked on it, because my students were all in the gen ed classroom. I've been pushing inclusion since 1994, and it was such an important thing, but it meant I had to be mobile. So I had a binder that I carried that had a section for each student and pages and things. Why not use OneNote? It's on your phone, it's on your iPad, it's on a device, it's on your laptop, it's on your tablet. You can carry it around and keep track of all those goals. The best part, digitally ink on top of it. So you go in to do observations, instead of you sitting there typing as you're doing your observations, you can quietly make notes. One of our principals uses forms and when he's doing his observations, because he can quickly just do it on his phone and not make a big deal out of it. But here's the other reason for that. So when my nephew was first diagnosed with SOTOS and we started getting all the paperwork that goes with it, my sister-in-law would walk into a meeting with a binder like this. And this is an empty one, but I can tell you his was full with all the paperwork that she wanted to make sure she had ready for meetings. And I watched her walk in with that and I said, why are you doing that? And she said, well, I need all this paperwork because I don't know what's going to come up. So she came over one night and we opened OneNote, and now what she walks into meetings with is her cell phone. This is a lot lighter than this. So we scanned everything into OneNote. We used Office Lens. That way we can annotate on it and send it straight to OneNote. Turn that binder of paperwork into an app on your phone. So as you can see, there's a picture there from my nephews, and there's communications, evaluation, all his IEPs. And the schools now will send us that PDF of the IEP, and we can put it straight into OneNote to access it. And that way his dad can see it, his mom can see it, I can see it. If I can't be at a meeting and they need me to look at that paperwork, I can quickly go into our shared OneNote and I can see everything that I need. And we've even done it live where I've made comments as we were going if I couldn't be at the meeting. So I put in there, a friend of mine asked me to please make a beginner tutorial, like from scratch, pretend I know nothing on how to do this. So I linked to a YouTube video that is really for beginners. And I know that Microsoft Education has a number of videos, but just to get you started on how you can go through and just go from this binder to your phone. It's so much easier. Office Lens is on Android, it's on iOS, it's Apple, it's everywhere. And then I can sit there and take a picture of it, crop it, annotate it, whatever I need to do, it's ready for me to use at any moment. So I highly recommend it. And what I love about all of these tools that Mike has shown you, the majority of them are in the free Microsoft account. I'm fortunate enough to be in an Office 365 district, so I have access to the full version, but I love that I can open the app and I have everything that I need personally, professionally, OneNote, 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 which I know Mike will love that. But I think when it comes to special ed, the organization features in it will really save you a lot of time and help you in the long run. And that's my OneNote little commercial.
Well, I'm not going to argue with that. I pretty much agree with everything you were just saying. Well, thank you. That was great. I think that the things that you're talking about are absolutely relevant to a large, and not just the United States, a large chunk of the world. And, you know, I hear a lot from a lot of educators from around the United States and the world, and this is very much at the top of a lot of people's list because we haven't had to have this type of solution before. Like, no one really knows what to do with distance learning, especially in 504s and IEPs and some of the scenarios that you were talking about. So I think it's incredibly helpful to have you come and talk on the show about this. So thank you very much for joining us today. Appreciate it. In terms of our updates, just to recap at the end, the accessibility quick tips, that YouTube playlist is out there. And we also had the big Teams meeting updates announcement, a ton of features, some of the very top things that all educators around the world have been asking for, we announced today, and some of them are already rolling out. And then we also just launched this new Teams remote learning quick tip videos, which is on the Microsoft Education channel. And the YouTube playlist link is right there, so check those out. Recap, we've got the show notes, so if you want to get a hold of Karyn's slides, as well as the slides that I have on all of the PD and resources and information, this PowerPoint's going to be posted probably later today, and then tomorrow the video will come out on YouTube. We've got our YouTube playlist, and that's right here. If you haven't seen that, it's great because you can go pick and choose. This is our 15th episode, and we've had lots and lots of different topics, and you can pick and choose the videos that make sense, and you can sort of browse around and find what works for you. And then our support here. Any problems you have, any support you need, we've got a great set of support staff to answer questions, to troubleshoot, to help get you back up and going. So be sure to use that, bookmark it. And lastly, upcoming webinars so Friday, Friday's our day off, so to speak, but Monday, we've got Jenna Lee, AKA Jenny Long and Celie Clark, and Mr. Justin Chando. So we're gonna go into the Chando zone on Monday, along with Jenna Lee. Then we've got Hacking STEM on Tuesday, and then Leslie Fish will be joining us on Wednesday. So Leslie, given that all these conferences are canceled, she's been doing a lot of webinars and professional development remotely. So we'll be talking about that. We'll probably be also joking around and having some shenanigans and all sorts of other fun stuff. We're going to try to convince Justin Chando to stop by, but that guy's pretty busy. You know, he might blow us off. We hope he stops by, but he might not. And then this is our full schedule right here for all of the webinars, the links, the show notes, the calendar items you can use. That's all at the link in the webinar schedule. And other than that, a big thanks to Marilyn, who is our incredible producer. I think today, behind the scenes, we had a record number of attendees live on the webinar. So that's pretty cool. I think this is definitely an important topic. So thanks to everyone, and we will see you soon.